Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and in this episode, we sit down with Cody Clark. Cody is a magician, an autism self-advocate, and an all-around badass. This guy is incredible. Not only has he performed his Fringe show on the Fringe tour at multiple locations and gotten rave reviews, but he's done an incredible job of using and succeeding with the advice of finding his niche. He performs at disability organizations all over. He's created a sensory-friendly magic show for autism-specific groups, and he's doing an incredible job with it. And this guy just keeps going. He's performing at schools, performing at universities, and his magic is phenomenal. You're going to learn all about how Cody deals with obstacles, how he seeks out the best in the world and learns advice, and this guy's magic shows. And he just had lunch with Lance Burton last week. You know, I had the opportunity to coach Cody and work with Cody, and it is absolutely incredible. We talk about overcoming and sometimes not overcoming obstacles. And we talk about how you can do an incredible job in this world of making an impact, sharing the things that you want to share, being authentic to your true self. It was a wonderful conversation with Cody, and you are going to love it as much as I did. Here it is, a wonderful time with the one and only Cody Clark. Cody, how are you?
I'm doing amazing because this has been a big dream of mine.
You know, Cody, it has been incredible. Just to give a little bit of context, I honestly, I don't know where I met you. I don't know. I mean, I want to say Magi Fest, but I think I knew you before Magi Fest, you know? So do you remember where we met? I don't know that.
Well, when I was gigging before the COVID times, your podcast was the default thing I'd listen to. So I became a fan of the page. Then I realized, oh, you're the Jonah, all friend request you. And then Magi Fest right before COVID is the first time we met. We had a lot of fun jamming. So when you did the first call for your Upgrade Academy, I was like on a whim, hey, Jonah's nice, why not? And that was a life-changing moment right there, because not only did I survive quarantine, but now I do feel 100% confident I'll be able to move out my parents' house and be a full-time pro magician.
Dude, well, I'm super, super pumped for you and pumped for that. I was reminiscing about, like, you know, Magi Fest, and that was like so much fun. And I was just like, this guy's really got it. And then I started, you know, following his stuff. And to be honest, Cody, the thing that stood out to me most was that it felt like we had really similar journeys. You know, one of the things that I did was, you know, with respect to doing magic at summer camps, I kind of like stayed in my lane of doing summer camps, and I had my market, and I basically had a full thriving career in just a little tiny market that, you know, nobody would have known about, but I got to do all the fun things I wanted and all that. And a lot of that resonated with, you know, the projects that you were working on. Things felt very similar. And anyways, it's been a pleasure to work together. All that's been great, but I've just been really excited to interview you and hear about the journey and hear about, you know, what it's like to be an autism self-advocate magician. And one thing about it is that you are very open, blunt, sincere, and honest about the trials and tribulations of what it's all like. I'm really, really excited to get into it. And Cody, why don't we start at the very beginning? So how did you get into magic? How did you even get started?
Do we actually want to go as far back as my diagnosis story, given how much that will play out?
Yeah, let's go all the way back.
Well, we'll go all the way back June 22nd, 1993, which means I just turned 28 on Tuesday.
Wow.
That's when I was born, with my twin sister, Kelsey, who's very awesome. Shout out to you, Kelsey. But what that also meant was at 15 months young, she continued developing normally, walking and talking. I regressed. Usually autistic children will start walking and talking, then they'll lose all that. So their parents will think that we're going deaf. But when the doctor finds out we can hear just fine, that's when the autism starts to play in. And the doctor gave a worst case scenario, because we did have Rain Man, but that was it. No one knew how many different spots on the spectrum there actually were. So my parents were told I'd probably never walk, talk, get married, have children, hold down a job, much less be speaking to Jonah Babbins. But worst of all, they were told I'd never tell them that I love them. Here's the key. This is why my parents are such a big influence. They did not know they had a progressive view on autism. They're like, no, we're not going to listen to any of that. We'll treat Cody pretty much as well as we treat Kelsey and my older brother Reese. We'll just give him the few extra supports needed. They didn't throw me into a therapy facility. They didn't dismiss me and assume I'd amount to nothing in life. They didn't make advance arrangements for me to have like funding for my whole life. Instead, they let me live and die on my own merits while giving me the supports needed. And that's why I was able to go to kindergarten, talking and walking and potty trained. That's why when I progressed through elementary school, I had a deep love of trains. I expressed myself through trains at first. And I was always into the arts, but the arts plus sports especially are where the motor skills issues come in, where not being able to sing, where a lot of the autistic weaknesses make access to most arts hard. But on a family vacation to Gulf Shores, Alabama, right before middle school when I turned 11, there is a magician down there named Bart Rocket. He's more known for being in Branson, but for some reason he was in Gulf Shores. He gutted a strip mall and made it into his own tourist theater. And even as a kid, I thought that was a very punk rock attitude to have. To be like, if I'm not in Vegas, I'll just gut out the strip mall, make my own venue. That spoke to me. So I was like, hey, please take me to this magic show. At the Bart Rocket Magic Show, Bart calls me up on stage. First does some change bag triple repeat material where the silks change color and then disappear and stuff like that. Then the gag once. What got me into magic, he carted out an audience dismemberment illusion. That is the Jim Steinmeier method of sawing a lady in half where it's audience participatory. Not only did I get to choose an audience member, but he handed me the whole blade and had me push in the whole ass blade and saw a lady in half. Given that I could not hit a baseball, that I could not do anything else right in my life, sawing a lady in half had such an impact on me. I bought that sock of magic, actually did that first magic show at our vacation before we left in our family's hotel room. And then I joined the Louisville Magic Club soon after I got home.
Wow. There's a couple incredible things, in that story. I mean, first of all, thank you for acknowledging in this whole thing, your parents, help in this. I think just with the timing of this, I saw a post recently that you put out about your dad, a very grateful post on Father's Day. And I was thinking about it, and, even in this situation, it takes a lot for your parents to have handled this in such an incredible way. And, it shows that you are where you are right now, that they've allowed you to steer the ship.
And not just that, but handling me deciding to be a professional magician. And there has been some back and forth, to be honest, because when you raise an autistic kid and when you're like, phew, I'm through with that stress, they're 16, you would, of course, prefer that I take a more typical path. So I'm like, guess what? I want to be self-employed. They're like, why do you want to put more heartache on yourself after you experience this much? Right. But thankfully, they are 100% supportive. They could not be even prouder. And they've always listened to my perspective on things. They've never been like, no, don't do it. They've always been willing to listen to my side of the story. And we've always been able to come to solutions that have allowed me to stay in business.
That's phenomenal. So I wanted to shout that out and thank you for sharing that and acknowledging that. And there's a lot of people here who struggle with either in their own minds or in actual reality communicating with their parents that they don't want to go and do whatever the case may be and do magic. So thank you for talking about that. The other thing that I think is really interesting here is that what got you into magic was the openness of a magician to actually engage in a hands-on way on stage in front of his audience with somebody who is potentially, visibly autistic, right? He could have chosen to sweep across that audience and picked a kid that, maybe he would have said, oh, this is like a liability, to bring up Cody, maybe I'm going to bring up this other kid or whatever the case may be. And he didn't say no again to anything. He let you be a part of every last bit, and that it was impactful. And it's incredible that, it was, people talk about in magic, like representation, which is a whole other important conversation. They're being, magicians with autism, but we're not even talking about that yet. We're just talking about inclusion of the performer on stage and how big of a difference that makes. And I think because now you perform in a lot of venues with, a variety of special needs and things like that, you are hyper aware of this idea of inclusion from the performer. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I'd be happy to, since the focus on diversity and inclusion in magic is rightfully so on there being more African-American performers, more openly neurodiverse performers. The unique perspective I have to offer is we also need to consider it on the other side too, how to not only foster a diverse audience, but also how if a white performer shows up in a mostly African-American venue, how they can still kill and be respectful. And also how to adjust your magic for a sensory-friendly audience, which is my term for audiences that are primarily disabled, a major market of mine. How to adjust your routines so they aren't putting their hands on their ears, but instead enjoying it and feeling more empowered than anyone else. Even their teachers make them feel empowered in their entire lives.
Talk to me a little bit more about it. Like, right now, you are in a lot of experience, in a lot of situations like you just described, a lot of, sensory friendly environments, which is a wonderful title to the show, but also, a lot of times where you as a performer have to use your best judgment about, the impact of the show versus the inclusion sometimes of everybody, because, yes, sometimes bringing up a 2-year-old, who's running around on your stage is worrisome, and you maybe bring a 4-year-old. And same as if you're looking at an audience, how do you decide how to be inclusive, but also how to make sure that you don't, spend 10 minutes on a tangent on a show, which is, I think, what a lot of the magicians are fearful of, that they won't get the beats, they won't get the laughs, and they'll lose control because they're not picking, maybe an ideal audience member or something. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it starts with the material. You need to choose material that is gentle. Silk magic is great. That's why I'm a big advocate for silk magic, even though I'm of the younger magic generation. It needs to have simple to follow plots, but that does not mean it can't be complex. The other side of that is assuming competence, not ignorance. I call it's a children's magic show for adults. You still do card tricks, you still do coin tricks, but you also keep in mind the theories of kid show magic. It's not the destination, it's the ride, empowering all the audience members, all audience participation alongside bringing up people. So it's a weird sort of thing. You taking the theories of Danny Orleans and Silly Billy, but applying them to close-up card tricks. But that is essentially my big theory with sensory-friendly audiences. But that's the balance you need to strike.
I think that's really valuable that, I guess in my head, I was thinking about the moment in time of, selecting an audience member or, that moment in time of, performing or whatever. But what you're saying is really great, which is it starts with making sure that you have material that it works for this audience. You have to make sure that you have material that isn't going to, be like, I love what you said, that silks are soft. They're, it's a simple, easy thing. It's not a terribly complex or scary or loud, item.
And then I can also answer your question as far as volunteers. I don't ask for direct participation till the third routine. The second routine is a group audience participation, and I use knots off silk for that because first 2 knots I do. Third knot, I'm actually maintaining this in person for my virtual shows, is I'm having everyone hold their hands out in front of them and do the knot themselves and then pluck off the imaginary knot. I use that moment to observe who is participating, who doesn't feel comfortable participating. And then I kind of know who I can and can't bring up.
That's great. Thinking about it in terms of, it's funny. I had a conversation with a client about a Zoom show, and she said, like, what happens if you call on an audience member in a virtual show and they really don't want to be there? Like, what happens? What happens? And I said to her, it never happens ever. And she said, what? And I said, it never happens ever once, ever, and I can guarantee that it won't happen. And she said, why? And I said, because when you're doing a show and you look out in the audience, there's certain people that are smiling and laughing and having a good time. And there are certain people with an angry look on their face or a non-engaged look on their face, or certainly a look on their face that says, please, I just want to be a viewer of this show. And it's our job to kind of look out there and pick the people that are telling us with their engagement and with their body that they want to be as an active participant, or they want to be a engaged from my seat participant, or they want to be a watch and don't talk, don't talk directly to me type of participant. And it's for not just for the sake of, the show, but for the sake of just looking at our audience and trying to give them the best experience.
That's why you practice your script over and over again, so you can be present and input that important information while still making sure the show proceeds.
I want to talk about one other thing with respect to sensory friendly shows, and then we'll kind of zoom back and go back to kind of the Louisville Magic Club, because I know that made a big impact. But in terms of sensory friendly magic shows, I think actually you and I were having a funny conversation that a lot of magicians get inquiries about sensory friendly magic shows or magic shows for autism environments, and they don't even reply to the emails. So by the way, send those emails to Cody because he loves those. And
exactly. And using Jonah's coaching, I am setting up a finder's fee program of sorts. The exact details of that are to be established, but if you do seriously do that, I will make sure you get paid too.
Yeah. So anyways, just wanted to share that, if you don't want to do them, send it to Cody because he does, and you'll be able to make some money from it. But if you do want to do them, right now we have a couple of pieces of advice, about audience member selecting, about material selecting. What other advice would you give to somebody specifically if they're stepping into an autism environment? I know that I get 2 inquiries a month, from different autism groups. And I would love to know any other advice that you have for magicians who want to do these kinds of things, but maybe sometimes feel like a fish out of water and feel like they don't have what to serve this audience.
Well, they are not at all hard shows to do. It's not that different from usual shows, but it is a little bit because you can't do tricks with loud noises, and that sucker tricks most of disabled audiences will not get because they think the trick is legit. I've tried with the dive box. They actually were impressed by the first phase of it. So leave out your sucker tricks and be very open to the audience reacting any way possible. Not that they'll always be crazy, but there will be the 1 or 2 in every show who just scream the whole time. And that is something you have to accept. You cannot by any means be like, hey, shut up. Do not do that. If it's something that they can help, you possibly can do disciplinary actions. But if it's something they obviously can't help, if they're obviously stimming, and that's what autistic people, myself included, do when we get excited is we stem on stem toys.
Can you explain what stemming is? Nobody, people who don't know what it is, can you explain what that is? Stemming?
A stem toy?
Yeah.
Well, a stem toy is like a stress ball, like a spinner, essentially something that we with autism can use to concentrate our energy on when we're getting so excited about being in a social situation that we can direct it outward instead of, like, in the worst case scenario, some people may have meltdowns if they can't let that out. For me, I just look weird unless I am having a fidget toy with me, and Jonah's gotten used to that from our mastermind meetings.
It's interesting. I obviously got a chance in the last year of working together and year plus to learn a lot about the autism community and learn a lot about just all the things that you live with, good and bad and interesting. And it's been phenomenal. And one of the things that's been so wonderful is that I'm not afraid to say the wrong thing or anything. You're very open and very, clear about how you feel and about the way things are and the way that things aren't. And I think that it's helpful not only for me, but also a lot of people that come into it with a lot of confusion and a lot of fear, to talk about just a lot of these subjects. So thank you for coming at it with.
I feel at the end of the day, most people are trying to be good. They just don't quite know everything yet because it's impossible to know everything. So I do take a positive attitude toward others' mistakes about neurodiversity.
I love it. Let's rewind a little bit because I think we're going to get back to this. Let's rewind a little bit and talk about the Louisville Magic Club. You know, I'm always interested in that moment for a magician where they realize that there's like more of us. You know, it's not just like the one that you found. And I know the Louisville Magic Club it's not only was great for you, but it's been kind of a really great magic club. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience there?
Well, it would have just stayed with Marvin's Magic kits, and I may have wound up out of Magic entirely if it weren't for the Louisville Magic Club's fundraiser show and the amphitheater and the park in my neighborhood. I heard about that, and I begged my mom to take me there, and she, of course, did. And that's when the walk around performers were like, hey, you know, there's a club of us, and that this is our club fundraiser. So I was like, oh boy, let's go to the meeting. And that's where I learned there's a big world of magic. There's all these L&L DVDs. There's this lecture tour. There's people like Michael Omar, who my parents don't know yet are on Copperfield level in our community. And that was the first year of middle school. My elementary school was as open and progressive as my parents about autism, but my middle school was not. So I got severely bullied for the first time ever. But at the Magic Club, it didn't matter. These guys who are like 50, 60, 70 years older than me in some cases accepted me as an equal, and even more so than my parents feared they would. My parents went to the first few meetings and stayed the whole time and were hesitant to take me scared to death at all the worst case scenarios. But instead, it was only the best case scenarios. And
Wow.
I do think that's what's distinct about the Louisville style of magic. Usually cities that have a lot of magicians like Chicago with a close-up bar magic, Las Vegas of illusions, they're known for one genre of magic. I think what the Louisville style of magic is saying, hey, you can be yourself. We'll give you the tools you need to be whatever you want to be. We'll just train you so Lance can be the classic Dove act. Mac can be the country bumpkin who wears plaid. Steve Bargatze can hate kids. And Cody can be all about authenticity rather than deception. I think that is the Louisville style of magic. That is why there's so many that come out of Louisville, and why to this day, the Louisville Magic Club is one of the strongest of the magic clubs affiliated with both major societies.
I love that. It sounds like, you know, I'm always really, really pumped about magic communities, you know, like what a magic community can do makes a big difference. And I think, you know, rightly so, we're having a lot of conversations recently about you know, a lot of the ways that magic communities are sometimes not welcoming and are struggling with diversity and all of that. But this is such a wonderful example, which I have heard many different times. I've heard, you know, women in magic tell this same story as well, which is they were very concerned that there would be a lot of negativity or a lot of, you know, something because they're the odd one out. And then all of a sudden it was welcoming and positive and wonderful. And not every place, you know, not every magic club or community, you know, is like that, but it's wonderful that you were a part of one, you know, that just came with such open arms, and really, really phenomenal to hear. What kind of, you know, obviously there's, you know, the Magic Club does a lot and did a lot, but you're talking about helping people explore and work on their own magic. And you're talking about, you know, outdoor show fundraisers. It sounds like you guys have done some really creative things at that club. Do you want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the things that have helped make it an environment that people can really, you know, be themselves? What's going on at that club that is not allowing, but, you know, making it, is a catalyst for people to be so creative and unique?
Well, we do have lectures, of course, but I think it's more of an open platform and open dialogue. There's not really any cliques. There's not really a pressure to do one certain style of magic or another style of magic. Instead, you come in as you are. And even on Tuesday, we had a meeting on my birthday. Most people at jam sessions only bring like card magic and stuff like that. I brought in a whole billiard ball routine and I shared it with them. And they gave me some honest critiques, which is, I know that can be hard to do at a magic club, but they were like, it's 75% there. Just record yourself on OBS so you can make sure you've got the timing right. They are that specific with their critiques that technically with the shell handling, I'm there, but I just need to time it with my eyes, the misdirection.
Dude, that's amazing. And I think, by the way, there's a lot of people, myself included, that are sometimes frustrated with magic clubs because there really isn't that much service of the community. It's like a lecture club, or people just sit around and show each other a card trick or something. So really getting hands-on.
I'll talk about this more when you ask me what I don't like about magic, but I am doing volunteer work for the SAM and SYM to help more clubs be at the standard as the Louisville Magic Club.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think everybody can. I think I've been hard on clubs, on magic clubs for a little while, because I think that a lecture club is no longer an important service given the way the internet is. And I think that not every club has evolved, and it's really, really, really important, because young people are not going to magic clubs because the internet is better. And I've been very hard on magic clubs, and it's very exciting to hear of one that serves the community in such a phenomenal way, which many do. I know many do, but many also do not. So it's good to hear of one.
I'll save the meat of my response for later, but in short, I know what magic clubs can be. I may not like what they all are outside of Louisville right now, but I know what they can be.
That's great. Let's talk about kind of the journey next. So you started getting really into magic, you learned more about the community, and then all of a sudden you went to university, and all of a sudden you had to tell your parents that you wanted to be a magician or take this seriously full time. I mean, I'm sure they had a conversation about it in their minds. But talk to me about kind of the journey and how you took this seriously.
Well, late high school, early college, there were a bunch of formative traumas in my life related to me trying to date and epically failing, because a lot of people don't want to date a disabled person. Plus, the executive functioning issues that autistics have. Executive functioning is the parts of your brain that plan out your days. When autistics usually have problems with this, doesn't matter when you're a kid, but when you're having to do term papers, when you're trying to be a pro early on, and it's harder to do the business plans needed, and that only does kind of reinforce some of my parents' worries, that all contributed to me having a period of mild depression throughout all that. And magic really did not serve me anymore. Magic, I had what's called anhedonia about magic. Anhedonia is when you used to really like something, and in the deep of your heart you still do, but you can't really muster the same positive feelings that you used to, and that going to magic club meetings, doing shows, is only going through the motions. Other art forms did serve me. In particular, this may be one of the most unusual creative influences to combine with magic you've ever heard. But in late high school, early college, well, every young middle school kid has an AC/DC phase, right?
Mm-hmm.
YouTube algorithms took me from AC/DC to Leonard Skinner to Southern rock, and then eventually to hardcore old school country music. I was immediately drawn to the sound of the pedal steel guitar, how the crying of the steel guitar sounds like crying over losing a relationship. And also, unlike magic, country music is just honest. It's like, hey, I lost my girl. Now I'm crying in the bar. Hey, I'm poor as crap. I can't afford to pay the bills. Let me vent about it. There is no pretense at all. There is no black suit, white tie. There's no tuxes at all. Instead, there's people just open forum, kind of like the Magic Club. People are very emotionally authentic, especially for a genre of music people stereotype as the genre dumb people listen to. It is a rather smart genre, and that really appealed to my writing side. And then that really formulated. And then in college, there was a particular assignment. I took a class called Cultural Diversity and Performance, and it was about learning different cultures' performance styles. There was an assignment called the Yoruba Praise Poem. It's a poem that the Yoruba tribe in Africa writes when you write about something you love and about something you hate at the same time. And there's a particular situation with a particular lady who to this day is the one that got away. It was midnight the night before the assignment was due. It was not done yet, mainly because I wanted to write about this girl, but I was kind of scared that would put me into Taylor Swift territory, writing about every single breakup. But I found at the time it was Grandma's necklace. It's now morphed into a weird sort of snowstorm routine with red tissue paper hearts that turn into a flurry. It's essentially the pieces remain broken. I tear up the heart. I do not restore it because magic can't fix everything. Then I take it further by making even more broken pieces, because the situation not being solved is what makes life beautiful. That problems can't always be fixed, just like in old school country music. I went into class. Essentially, there's a quote I'll share from Hall of Fame songwriter Harlan Howard. that all you need for a good country song is 3 chords and the truth. So I went into class with the 3 slights that I needed to do that routine and the truth about how heartbroken I was. The class stayed stunned silent for 5 whole minutes. 5 whole minutes, Jonah. Then the teacher was like, wow, I never thought magic could be that good. Then that is when it hit me. That's when I was like, there is a lane in magic for me to be authentic, for it to not be about tricks, not be about deception, not be like, ooh, my favorite movie is The Sting because they're pulling cons on people. Instead, it's a personal way for me to express myself, just like George Jones, just like Dolly Parton, just like all the great country songwriters who simply had a guitar, went on stage at Lower Broadway in Nashville and sang their hearts out. Essentially, that is when I decided to take a songwriter's approach to developing magic routines and sharing the honest truth with my audiences in an art of deception.
What a phenomenal story. And I think, it does happen like that. It happens that we have these moments that just push us to take a risk and to try it and to just do it. And it sounds like that really was it that moved you to the other side. And by the way, I've seen you perform a lot and you do a really incredible job of being authentic and sharing the truths of the things that you like trains and, your mimas, cheese and, like things you're not afraid to talk about. And this is something, by the way, that comes up a lot in magic because, conventional magic advice is to take a routine and to add something that you like, about the world or that you don't like or whatever, and to talk about it. But what ends up happening a lot of the times is it's very, very, very clunky. Usually what it means is they talk too much about the thing that they like and it boggles the minds of the people and they have no idea what's going on and they just like tune it out and kind of watch the trick. And you actually do a really, really good job of fixing that problem and talking about things authentically while not also stepping on the magic. Do you have any advice for magicians who want to start being authentic, want to start saying what they feel, but their tricks don't seem like, for me, literally me personally, it's easier for me to do a trick about nothing than it is for me to do a trick about a subject because I lose, I often lose people. So it's easier for me to do something about nothing. Do you have any advice for someone like?
Well, it was hard for me to get to that point as well. Right after that realization, I did go through a period where my routines were like that, but it's all about script editing. And I learned this also from the Jeff McBride Magic and Mystery School. They're like, magic needs to be more than just a stunt. But as of late, and they even admit that in their Genie article that they wrote on their 25th anniversary, that they also are like, premise is important. Actually, story is second most important, but the premise is the most important because the premise is essentially the core things you need. So once you know the premise, you know what you can't afford to leave out. And also, at the end of the day, remember that you're a magician, that if you're selling yourself as a magician, the magic needs to be strong. There needs to be a lot of magic. There needs to be some rest routines where they are more fun along with the heavy routines. And that, yes, I love old school country music. Yes, I actually envision myself more so being on stage like Dolly Parton rather than envisioning myself being like a Dan Harlan on stage. But at the same time, I'm not a country music singer because I can't sing. I'm a magician, so I can be influenced by those outside influences, but the magic does need to be strong. And that is where I do agree with Darwin Ortiz in the early parts of his book, Strong Magic. The magic must stand on its own. Since one of the two biggest problems there, according to Larry Haas, are weak magic to pair with it and bad acting skills. So the other way to fix it is read Acting One by Robert Cohen, or Acting for Magicians by my dear friend Richard Ribufo. He essentially took Acting One, the most common college acting textbook, and added notes to adjust it for magicians. And I'll make sure Jonah knows where y'all can find that. It is a great book.
Cody, the wealth of knowledge that you are in magic is bonkers. It is just absolutely bonkers. Bonkers, bonkers, bonkers. Let's talk about kind of the next phase, the next step. So you realize that you can do magic that isn't just like doing the magic, but instead you could add some of your authenticity, take a little bit from these, country singers and implement that way of thinking into your magic and really share what you think and what you feel. And this was when you were in college. So I imagine a couple years later is when you decided to take magic seriously. I know eventually you spent some time doing the fringe circuit, but what was kind of the first few steps? How did you then go and take this thing seriously that you're like, hey, there's room for me. How do I find the people that want me? What did you do?
Well, at the University of Louisville, which is also where Lance Burton went. And by the way, Lance went to my same high school, went to my same college, lived in my same neighborhood. So his path, even though I don't do dub magic, was formative to me because he showed me a professional magician can come, not just from Louisville, but from the poor white trash end of Louisville. So Lance, having blazed the path for me, really helped in advance. Wow. But unlike him, and he loves when I joke about this, I actually graduated from U of L. Because he won FISM, had the best excuse not to graduate, but I did have to graduate, but with a degree in marketing with a minor in theater, aka the showbiz degree.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, the performing side of the degree, that gave me the stage time during the studio theater open mics. That gave me the knowledge of how to perform well and not sound like I'm reading from a script. The business school, I think, was more formative because I learned about a magic concept called targeted marketing. Essentially, that the mistake most business owners make is mass marketing to the whole world at once. The only result of that we see every day on SME Talk Magic and all the magic Facebook groups, a race to the bottom. People complain that they can't get paid what they want because to the public, if you mass market, you're a top hat and bunny magician. So the business school taught me to be very specific in who I market to. Market myself not just as a specialty, but to groups of people who need you but don't know yet they need you. And that is part of the reason, business-wise, that I decided to do a more autism advocacy direction with my show. It's because there's so many advocacy groups. There's departments at colleges that just center on disabilities work. And when I decided to tour the Fringe circuit, my marketing became a lot easier because all I had to do to sell tickets before even flyering once. I did flyer, of course, but before even flyering, I just emailed, hey, autism group, I'm doing a show. It's cheap as long as you can get to the Fringe Festival. Bring a bunch of people. And their people combined with the people I'd flyer, combined with the really good reviews. That is why I only won awards once or twice because that is hard competing against all the Fringe shows. But that's why right off the gate, I went from Fringe newbie to Fringe legend.
Yeah, it's amazing. One of the challenges with Fringe that everyone's trying to do is get people to show up. And it seems like you hacked that by communicating with the people, like you said, that need you but don't yet know that they need you. Was that the first thing that you did, was Fringe right out of school? Was there anything else that you did to get the ball rolling?
It was mainly Fringe because, I developed a different way of thinking our autism advocacy magic show because the Slant Culture Theater Festival in Louisville rejected my normal magic show, but was like, we want to show off a story and a premise and a through line. And eventually I ended with that heart routine I mentioned, and then I worked backwards up until my birth and diagnosis story with my opening routine. And eventually I had a solid magic show that I'll be as humbly as possible. It's in Francis Minotti's top 10. Nathan Call is raving about it. It's in his top 10 too. And actually, Fringe reviewers have compared me to Derek Delgadio.
Wow.
Not that I'm better than him, but a lot of Fringe Festival reviewers, you do get reviewed in legit newspapers, and that does help. I have been compared to Derek Delgadio.
Dude, I mean, it's phenomenal. And it's no surprise. Your stuff is really intelligent and well written and well performed. The magic is really...
And he's not about deception either. He's also about honest expression. I only got to see the movie version, but that really spoke to me. And that I feel I'm kind of like Derek Delgadio if he wore a nudie suit.
Like the country music, autism self-advocate nudie wearing Derek Delgadio. That's good.
Yep, you're right. I combine a lot of things together that would work for no one else, but they do for me. And that is a key part. Find the things that only you can pull off. It's weird how I've become known as, oh, you're the magician that likes trains. And then when I posted my meeting with Manuel Suevas, who is the living maker of nudie suits that made Elvis's of all peoples, a lot of people like Jeff McBride, a lot of the magic community likes the idea of me adopting the nudie suits as my costume.
It could be a phenomenal costume. And it's, again, like you had just alluded to, it's about leaning into all the things that you like and that you love and that you want to express and want to talk about. So
that's how you don't get imitated as a magician. I know that's a big concern, theft of the routines, and that is the right concern. But do like me, throw in everything you like to the point if people imitated it, not only would that be hard, but if they imitated my autism, unless they're autistic themselves, it would literally be unethical.
I agree. The better way to think about it is if your routine has so much of you in it that it's untakeable. It's untakeable. I want to talk about something a little bit difficult, that you and I have visited, but I really would love to kind of open this conversation in the air. You have been frustrated at many points by the lack of openness for events that have nothing to do with autism to hire you, and then specifically for events that are autism related to have the kind of budgets that, other types of events might. And I always have this really interesting, debate with myself. And this is kind of the crux of what I want to pass to you, which is I do not want anybody's hopes and dreams to be stomped on. If somebody wishes to, accomplish this great thing or that great thing, I am not going to say to them, you cannot do that. No, you're not going to be able to do that. But if you're born and you're 4.5 feet tall, then you will not play in the NBA. No matter how much you love basketball, no matter how much you they're just taller in the NBA, and you will not play in the NBA. Now, can you have an amazing, phenomenal, incredible life and career in basketball? Yes. A million ways over, yes. But you may not, play in the NBA. And I think it would be mean of your coaches if they know that both of your parents are 4 feet and you're also 4 feet. It would be mean of your coaches to tell you to go and play in the NBA. They should be telling you to go and make a phenomenal, amazing career and life around basketball that is not this thing that you're probably not going to do. And I think that in magic, you have been able to do the same thing. You've been able to say, I am really frustrated that these people are not letting me in, but I'm still going to have an amazing, phenomenal, epic, wonderful, cool career in magic by finding the people who need me, don't know they need me yet, want me, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that kind of thinking, going through that process?
Well, first, funny enough, the literal example of your example is in town right now, since the people who just bought Kentucky Kingdom theme park own the Harlem Globetrotters. The arenas aren't open yet, so they are the in-park entertainment at Kentucky Kingdom. And there is a basketball player with dwarfism who is on the Harlem Globetrotters and has literally done that. Known they would not be in the NBA, but that does not mean they can't be on the Harlem Globetrotters. And I've seen pictures on Kentucky Kingdom social media. He's there right alongside all the others. So Jonah is right, everyone. And not only that, but more so toward my career, the big disconnect for me was how much the friend circuit anointed me king, yet then turning around, having a hard time with like the prestigious magic venues getting on, and having an especially hard time with Fool Us. Because I developed a theatrical magic show that really worked on the friend circuit. At the same time, magic became publicly popular. The magicians found the public wants to see stunts, wants to see tricks, and develop venues around that. And of course, loving magic, I want to perform at all the legendary magic venues. And Fool Us is my big dream, but approaching them with the material I currently have been doing, I have found the door shut. And then the other side of that is this won't incriminate one because almost all of them have said it, but they've all said a version of everyone has something, which is the most insulting thing you could say to a disabled person, because that invalidates my diversity experience in favor of other diversity experiences, where instead all should be equally considered on talent alone. But anyways, those two have been consistently closed doors for me. I'm still trying to bang open, but there is a path for me. I have been keeping busy. I've made more this year than I made last year. I'm well on track to meet Jonah's income goal. And I've had audiences just eating out of the palm of my hand. and I can take criticisms, get better and better. I have my own hypothesis on Fullest, especially. I'm going to let the venues come later, but Fullest is the big one I'm going to work on. And I have my own hypothesis as to what to do different next year. So the best thing you can do is keep trying if it's really, really important to you, like eventually being on Fullest is for me. And also know that Fullest is not going to make or break your career, that I'm still staying busy, even though I can't put the Fullest logo on my promo.
You know, it reminds me of the Mario the Maker Magician quote where he says, be passionate about your dreams, but flexible about the details of those dreams. And I really think you have nailed it, where you are a full-time professional magician, performing, speaking, gigging, you know, all of that stuff. And you've had to navigate which places are the best places for you and which places are not. And I think no matter who you are, what you're born with or without, or whatever the case may be, you know, everybody should use that line of thinking, you know, the line of thinking that says, you know, who are the people that are for me? You know, what are the places that is for me? And I'll joke about this. I sweat a lot when lights are on me. I'm not good for television. You know, Jonah's not good for television. He wasn't made for television. No problem. There are plenty of magicians that would be thrilled to go on TV and they'd be thrilled. Jonah's not, you know, is not made for television. So I will do other things, just as an example. But, you know, I think that that mindset, and thank you for sharing that Harlem Globetrotters example. Really, really a wonderful example where, you know, I think Eugene Berger saying that there are many doors in the world of, messing that quote up horribly, many rooms in the world of magic, you know? And I think there's many, many ways that we can perform and do incredible stuff. And you really have, so.
And Eugene Berger has another quote specifically about minorities in magic that I feel I should share because it's been relevant to me. There's one big advantage and one big disadvantage to being a minority magician. The big advantage is that you have markets no one else can enter. Like me with the advocacy groups, everyone else who's a minority in magic with their advocacy groups. And there will be clients who, you've even found this with the ones who've tried to approach you, who are like, all things considered, I want the one who actually is one of us.
Yep.
The big disadvantage is that unfortunately a lot of clients are bigoted, and you'd be surprised at who some of those are. I've unfortunately have been surprised, like especially all the prestigious magic venues. They're usually the ones that have been directly bigoted in their rejections. So there will be some people who only want 100% straight white men, that even me being a straight white cisgendered man who likes old school country, who likes things that men are expected to like, just throwing autism, that is too hard for some people to accept. And that is unfortunately something you do have to work. You do have to work to accept in yourself if you want to be a successful professional minority magician.
And also, and on that same note is that, like, you know, we know, like you just said, we know that people's judgments are incorrect. Our value should not dip or rise based on the judgments of others.
Which unfortunately it does sometimes within the disabilities market. And thankfully there's enough that do pay up to make up for the ones that don't. But it's so frustrating getting into a sales call, and even the lowest package, the recorded 200 show package, they're like, how dare you charge that? It's for the cause.
Yeah.
Yes, it is for the cause. That's why I thought I'd offer this service to you. That's why I want you to pay me, because I'm trying to help you fill a need. But it's hard for some people, even within my own market, to see it that way, because I think systemically disabled work has been so undervalued. The concept of paying a disabled person, especially in a country where it's legal to pay sub-minimum wage to disabled people, that's been probably one of the hardest barriers for me to overcome.
I think it's also that in an industry where the term is synonymous a lot of the times with volunteer, charity, money raising, whatever, you know, like college is not synonymous with raising money, with volunteer, with, you know, those are, corporate isn't synonymous with that. But, you know, disabilities program is synonymous with, you know, a lot of the times it makes people think of, you know, like, oh, volunteering for a disability. Oh, you know, donating, you know, oh, you know, those ideas come up a lot more.
I'm doing all the right marketing things. It's just that they're not prepared. They're not built to pay out. They're built to keep in.
And you know what? Some like that's true for many, many, many markets. It's true for many markets. And you are also finding the ones that are built to hire talent and specifically that hire disabled talent. I shared with you I think a voice note or something of a client that said to me, yes, all things being equal, I would rather the disabled magician than the non-disabled magician because of our audience. And I'm like, yes, obviously you would. Here's Cody, right? So I love that. Cody, I have one other thing that I want to ask you about before we get to the wrap-ups. A lot of magicians spend their magic life engaging with the least other magicians as possible. Let me explain what I mean. Maybe they'll jam with a friend, maybe they'll buy a book, maybe they'll whatever, but it's very, very rare to have magicians that seek guidance over and over and over again to work with the greats. Like you go and spend time with Jeff McBride, you go and spend time, you do this with a lot of different magicians. You prioritize education, even still to this day. And it shows, when we hear you talk about magic, your knowledge is incredible. Talk to me about the importance or some of the reasons why and how you are putting yourself in so many different situations to just be working alongside incredible magicians.
Well, part of it is that I personally feel I know nothing, so I go to everyone who knows everything. I know I'm the least expert in what I do, so I seek out the experts like you, like Jeff McBride, like they're not famous, but I do have a local group of self-advocates who work to get each other paid work and who help us refine each other's advocacy efforts. And even as far as when I was in Nashville for my gig on Wednesday, going to Manuel Sueba's and asking what he thinks about me wearing a nudie suit on stage. So part of it is that I don't feel I'm an expert, so I seek the experts. I think the lack of shame actually does come from the autism. I did see something, I think, on E! Entertainment where they interviewed an autistic woman who was from New York City. Her special interest is collecting celebrity autographs. Her big secret, she didn't know, she wasn't self-aware to know, is because of her Asperger's. But she's unashamed to walk behind those ropes, to walk through those construction fences and be like, hey, can I have your autograph? And usually the celebrities are so shocked, they just give it to her. And they're relieved to know that she's not selling them. So
that's an incredible point. It's funny how much, people ask me, they're like, how do you interview all these famous magicians for the podcast? And I'm like, it's really easy. I email them, but I think that, I say that as if it's easy, but I know that a lot of people spend a lot of time repeating in their heads over and over, oh no, I'm going to inquire and I won't be able to do it. Oh no, how could I, message this famous person who made suits for Elvis? Who am I to email them? And people really do feel this. And I think that, I think what you just shared is exactly right. Probably or possibly because of the autism, you have put yourself into situations where you're not afraid to connect with those that are phenomenal because you are not hesitant to communicate with them. And I think it's made all the difference in, the quality of your work. And constantly, I know you mentioned a couple of people, but constantly you are mentioning people. You're like, oh, and this person was helping me with my show, and this person saw my act, when this person gave me notes on my show, when this person, and I think that you seek that feedback more than others do. And it shows. Any advice for somebody who maybe wants a little bit of courage to go seek feedback and seek help from the experts in magic?
Well, especially the ones that are selling either their services or their costumes, they're open to you because they're having to be in business themselves at the end of the day. Manuel, he accepted me because I could be a potential customer even still. That may be a while away because custom embroidery is expensive, but I was a potential customer, so he treated me like an equal. But even outside of that, especially in the magic world, the DMs are open. They've never been, usually, I can't always guarantee this with my friends that they'll answer when I send them a DM, but a magician almost always, more often than not, even if they're famous, they usually answer. They're usually happy to share a quick word of advice.
What an amazing point there. Let me just say that again. I'm not sure when I DM my friends if they're going to answer. But I know if I DM a magician, famous or otherwise, he's going to answer with his with his advice. And actually, there's a little mini lesson in there, which is that he's answering with his advice, which is a lot of times you have to actually go and ask an intelligent question or share why you want their specific advice or help, or whatever the case may be. And that makes all the difference. That makes them know that you actually care about them and not just, I guess, a random message.
Yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing. That's why I'm close friends with Lance Burton, aside from all the coincidences. That's why I actually had good conversation with Manuel and all of them. Treat them like they're humans, not like they're famous. And it does kind of creep me out at magic conventions. Like the Magi Fest, David Blaine just showed up. Everyone was just hovering around him. People start acting strange when they see celebrities when they're humans at the end of the day. And even the front desk receptionist at Manuel's place, there was a picture of Marty Stewart, the big country singer, right behind her. And I was like, how do y'all deal with celebrity clients? And they're like, they're humans like anyone else because their money spends just like yours at the end of the day.
Wow. You know, it's really amazing that so much of what causes people, and by the way, this is exactly true for email outreach to potential clients. And, this is exactly, you reach out to a conference and you say, hey, you should have me speak at your conference, right? There are people that hem and haw for like 6 weeks about not wanting to send that email, worried that the conference is going to say no so harshly or whatever the case may be. And I think what you just said there is right. And I love that example of you saying, hey, how do you deal with celebrities? And they're like, yeah, it's just the same as everybody else. Cody, before we get to the wrap up questions, to kind of maybe put a good pin in this conversation about how diversity plays a role and how, we can many times point the fingers and put the onus on people and saying, hey, you are bigoted and you don't want me here and you this and you that. And all of that being said, that doesn't really help, our cause sometimes. And really what we have to do is figure out how to do the thing that we love so much and share it with the world and put it out in the world. So if someone's listening to this and they are either, not neurotypical or whatever else is in their mind right now thinking, hey, but things are really different for me because blah, 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 blah. Okay. Whatever the end of that sentence is, things are really different for me because blah, 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 blah. What would you tell them?
A lot of people would probably disagree with me, but I'd say assume most people are good at the end of the day. I could just be lucky, granted, but when I went up to you for jam for the first time, even before you knew about the autism part, unless you knew about it because of social media, you just jammed with me like everyone else. That put your foot out there, especially around your area of special interest. That is the bridge into the world, and that's why autistic special interests are so important to us. Because through a deck of cards, Jonah and I built a friendship that endorsed to the point I'm on the podcast. Through trains, I've been able to connect with a whole different set of people. Through Old School Country, I was able to connect to the Manuel Suevas. So your special interests are a way in to be on an equal platform with anybody. Assume people have good intentions right off the bat, with, of course, some rare exceptions that they expose themselves as bigots on Facebook.
Dude, I love that. That is such practical advice, which is your special interests is your path to being treated as an equal. And I think that may be kind of weird advice, but I think it's kind of great advice, that and by the way, let me just say this in another way. Anybody independent, your passions are what's going to allow, make for you having more interesting and compelling conversations. People are going to talk to you about things that are more exciting for you to talk about. You are going to talk to people about things that are more exciting. So just, going down those rabbit holes is great.
Probably rare that someone on your podcast has talked about magic by talking about country music, by talking about trains.
You know what? Absolutely. But also like we alluded to earlier, I think that in magic, it is common advice to, in your magic, talk about the things that you love, and nobody does it. It's common advice to write your script based on, the truths about the world and what it is that you have to say and all the meaning of and nobody does it. So actually doing it and actually talking about your love of trains and your love of, your story, and talking about all of these different things in your actual routines, cheese, like in your actual routines, is the thing that I think a lot of magicians are trying to do. And I think that this idea of magic and that has kind of been a through line here, which is like a good little secret, is the magic and, right? Is you're going to be unique by adding your other things. You're going to be unique by going down your, your specific path that's different from everybody else.
Exactly. I think that will influence my take home point.
Well, it's so amazing. You know how this whole podcast goes. You're like, oh, I'm already planning for the take home points. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Most people don't even know. Okay. So let's start, the end of the episode. Each has the same wrap up questions. You seem like you know this. You could do this whole thing. Anyways,
I've mentally rehearsed this. I think I have my answers on these planned down to a T. So let's get to these.
Let's do them. So let's start with the endless chain. For the podcast to go on for eternity, each guest should recommend another guest that would be on the show. The 2 rules are you have to be able to put us in contact. You can't just name someone, and we cannot have had them on the show before. Who would be a phenomenal guest?
There was one mentor of mine I've been saving for this moment. I consciously did not mention them in other moments because I wanted to bring them up now. The big unsung hero of magic, the person who's given me stage time and so many others stage time through Indie Magic Monthly, and also a transgender magician who does magic as Rhonda the Younger, who does magic as Andrea Merlin, Queen of Magic, Taylor Martin. They've been a professional magician for about 60 years, based in Indianapolis. And they are an unsung hero because they weren't they knew they were trans, of course, but they weren't necessarily intentionally like, I'm going to break barriers here, like even I was. Instead, they just needed to make a living in this world, and how they've dealt with the hurdles from places like the Magic Castle of all places. That's up to Taylor if they want to elaborate, but they had the best Magic Castle rejection story I've heard. I will say that.
Wow.
But about all these, how Taylor's toppled these barriers has been so inspiring to me. And that Taylor's characters are why I have Conductor Cody, why I have Nudie Suit Cody, and why I have just Plain Suit Cody.
Wow.
The whole character thing comes from Taylor.
That's phenomenal. And I follow them on Facebook and love everything I see. So that's a really, really great recommendation. Thank you for that. The next part is the bit about modern magic, So what is one thing in the world of modern magic that you like right now, and something in the world of modern magic that you don't like right now?
To compare the things I like, I will compare 2 hobbies. One that I left when I got into magic, and then of course magic. I'm into toy trains, especially Lionel trains. When I left trains and got into magic, both hobbies were the exact same. Old white guy hobbies who were dated. One hobby since has evolved and is currently publicly relevant. The other has stayed dying. Guess which is which, Jonah?
I guess magic is the relevant one and toy trains is not.
Yes, magic has listened to those critiques. Magic has figured out how to evolve, how to be relevant, how to invent new ecosystems to learn magic, how to get people exposed into it whilst retaining its core charm about what magic is. Where toy trains have continued the descent downward, and they literally think, oh, just make it operable on your iPhone. That'll get kids in. Where really, that's just a Band-Aid on a larger problem with that industry. Where magic, for all the faults it still has, it is now a relevant part of the ecosphere again. It's gone from people being bullied for being magicians to people being celebrated for being magicians. That's the big thing I like about magic a lot.
It's amazing that by the way, just to share this, because you and I are, of a similar age, it is amazing that in our timeline, in our lifespan, we grew up with magic being a nerdy thing, and now it's an awesome thing. It is amazing that we lived through that slow turning of the dial from it's embarrassing to it's incredible. Just boom.
And that's a sustainable elevation too. It's not a trend. It's sustainable, and I think it will be maintained forever.
I like to think so, but who knows? The way I think about it, I know we're going off a tangent, but who cares? That's what the podcast is for.
Exactly.
In my eyes, we are being held up by every time magic content comes out. So every Fool Us, America's Got Talent, Harry Potter, Now You See Me, that comes up, continues to juggle the beach ball in the air. And if those stop, the beach ball will fall. But right now, the beach ball is still pop, 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 pop.
And virtual's kept it in the air because you could argue Magic may be the only art that actually reinvented itself for virtual.
Yeah, I think virtual and Magic gave Magic an extra bump. I don't think it pulled from Magic. I think it gave it an extra bump. We'll see. I think if I'm going to make a weird little podcast prediction, my prediction is that when things come back, magicians are going to focus on experiences over shows because people are going to be dying for experiences. And we see it starting with, in New York with, they have that walk around experience that's happening in New York that's people are really loving. And I think it's going to happen more and more and more.
I think so too, and I'm excited to see it.
Me too. Let's talk about something that you don't like. What's something that you don't like in the world of Magic?
I think there's a lot of throwing the baby out with the bathwater in Magic right now because there is a lot about old white guy Magic that needs to die, but at the same time, a lot of it's still good material. Those L&L DVDs still have a lot of gems. The elders that are still in the Magic Club, the elders still at the Magic conventions, they're still great people with great advice. But yet, I feel like we're too eager to abandon those old routines. In my professional career, I consider myself like the country singer Emmylou Harris. Don't know if you've heard of Emmylou Harris, but she takes the old Carter family songs and adds rock and roll to them. So it's essentially like, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. So essentially, that's what I feel I'm doing, taking classics of Silk Magic, taking the Miser's Dream, but yet covering them in my own personality so much, like with Emmylou Harris songs, you don't realize until after the fact, wait, that was an old classic. Wait, that was a traditional piece of music or magic. And that's also circles back to why I'm doing volunteer work for the SAM and the SYM. The place for Magic clubs, I feel, is in ensuring that their members learn basic Magic skills. It should no longer be lecture clubs, I agree, but I do still feel there is a valid place for Magic clubs in the future. I'm not ready to let them die off, and that's why I'm using my positions in the SAM ecosystem to contribute ideas on how the societies, on how the assemblies can become training grounds instead of just the lecture circuit.
I love that. And I love what you said about that the negative in Magic right now is that a lot of people are discounting a lot of the amazing work that has led us here. And, I learned very early on that we just stand on the shoulders of giants. Like, I learned that if you think you invented something, you probably need to do more research, and like, that's the way that I was taught in Magic, like if you think you invented something, you probably have to do more research. Like that was the way that I was taught. And whether it's true or not, that was kind of the mentality. And I think that myself included, there has been this like, excitement for the new, movement from the old, excitement for the new. And there's a lot of amazing Magic. And just as a funny side comment, Ben and I are doing the Tarbell challenge now. So every month we're like recording a new trick from Tarbell. We're challenging each other. And boy, there's so many amazing tricks, obviously, that are just, completely no one's even looking, talking, thinking about, just like so many thousands. So really a good reminder for all of us to go dig into an old book and or go join a Magic club, communicate with some of the people that literally created this stuff. The next section is the take-home point. So people have been hearing us talk about a lot of different subjects for a little while now. And when they think back to the episode, they are going to remember maybe just one idea. What's the one idea that you hope that people remember when they think back to this episode?
I'd say that liking things, I'd say that different types of audiences, that script writing, that all the things I mentioned today, they're all nothing to be scared of, but rather it's a different way of thinking. Whether it's with disabilities, a different way of living in the world, a different way of thinking about Magic routines as beyond stunts, a different way of thinking about how to have a career in Magic. Don't be scared of any new things. Don't be ashamed of being your honest self. Instead, just embrace and cherish your different way of thinking.
Dude, I love that. Thank you, Cody, so much for coming on this and for sharing with everybody just how you got to where you are and all of the things that we can learn about the incredible journey and the amazing magic that you do. Cody, where can people find you if they want to learn more, if they want to, chat with you, jam, or even, pass on a gig that they think you would be perfect for? Where can people find you?
My website is codyclarkmagic.com. My email is info@codyclarkmagic.com. I pretty much accept any, especially a magician with a lot of mutual friends, as friend request on Facebook. There is also a fan page. Then there's Instagram and Twitter and TikTok are all at Cody Clark Magic. I've been having a lot of fun with TikTok lately. I will say that.
I was going to say two things, to sign it off. The first is if you liked just hearing Cody chat and share some of his ideas. He really is crushing it on TikTok, and something about the editing of TikTok makes it easy for a lot of people, but you specifically, to have really direct and articulate videos. Where like on other platforms, a lot of people struggle, they're like rambling or whatever, but I guess the limitation of time and whatever, makes your videos powerful because they are short and clear and punchy and well written. It's like a piece of your act. So, I would recommend anybody definitely go check out Cody on TikTok. And, as a personal note, it's been, Cody, we started working together just when the pandemic started. So it's been, I guess, 18 months, a bunch of different programs, that I've had, and you've been a part of all of them, and you've literally just crushed it and crushed it and crushed it. And I'm so excited, just watching you to continue to crush it. So, but loved working with you, and, we'll continue to love working with you. You're incredible, my friend.
Yeah, it's not going to end anytime soon. And I think it's all because you do such an awesome podcast. And now a big dream has just come true.
Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. Make sure to check out Cody on whatever social media platform you like best. I think he's pretty cool on TikTok, but he's pretty cool everywhere. Definitely check him out. And if you want to work together like I was working with Cody, then you can send an email to info@discourseandmagic.com and say, hello, I heard that episode with Cody. I'd love to know about working with you, and I'd love to tell you all about it. Otherwise, I'll see you online. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next Thursday. Peace.